we get a Zoom bomber. Okay, so we're being recorded, and we have Lucas Costanzi with us, who is the director of the movie Teatro das Sombras, a wonderful film about Jung and Jungian thought, particularly as it relates to the shadow. And welcome, Lucas, to the Monterey Friends of Jung. So let's pick up again with talking about you and your film, your background in film, and then how you came to make a movie about Jung and the shadow work.
Okay. Well, I'm a journalist. Well, first of all, I have to thank you, Lisa, for this invitation to propose this meeting with your friends and share my movie with your friends and your colleagues. And I'm very grateful for that. And thank you so much. Well, my background, I'm a journalist. I have a background in like a reports from a local TV. And then when I'm formed, when I finish my graduation, I go to Paris and I made specialization on documentary. So, and from there I start my first documentary about a painter, Brazilian painter, and then I start that in France, and then I go back to Brazil to finish this first work, and I start my career in movies. But I'm still working with enterprises and this kind of institutional videos to make money, actually, because here in Brazil, work with documentaries is not very profitable. So I have these two layers, let's say. I work with enterprises, with videos from enterprises, and my projects, personal projects, and something for TV or this kind of things. And how I make this, I enter on Jung world. Well, I think the last few years here in Brazil, and I think that in the United States as well, it starts to be, we have this polarization between left wings and right wings, in political issues. And I start in that it's starts to becoming very aggressive, very violent, and I start wondering about that, and trying to put a step back and looking for an explanation of it. And so I start to research, and I fall to the concept. I fall in the middle of the research. I found the Jungian concept about the shadow, and then I thought that it was an explanation. If it was not an explanation, at least it was a path to follow, and to try to understand what happened. And then I start to go. Then I go to some Jungian analysts to talking about this issue with them, and I start to, organize the movie.
Are there a lot of Jungian analysts in Brazil?
No.
Like in Argentina, there are a lot of Freudian psychoanalysts, and a lot of people in Argentina are in psychoanalysis, or at least they used to be. Is it similar in Brazil, or are analysts sort of a very small minority?
Yeah, I think Freudian psychology is way more known here. But I'm not pretty sure. I don't because I'm not an analyst, and I not know very well this relationship, between different kind of analysis. But I know that Jung in universities is not very known. Is not very, how to say that, they don't study Jung as so very much on universities. I know that because I talked with some students or psychology and psychologists, and they tell me that Jung is not very studied here.
I make a comment?
Sure, Sandra, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because there was not much Jungian psychology studied here in the United States in university, or it didn't have any real popular appeal whatsoever until the Red Book was published in 2009, right? And that just drew in a lot of very well-known personalities, including in the film industry. It sort of gathered in all these dispersed individuals of different walks of life, really, but who had been really powerfully influenced by Jung, but everybody was sort of quiet, and then the Red Book came forward, and it was astounding, I think, how much that impacted, and now there's just a much greater interest. And I just want to say I loved that so anyway, Brazil's catching up maybe, right? Hopefully your film will make a difference. That would be lovely. And I really liked the structure of your films. So as far as I remember, most of the discussion with the analysts was done with the visuals of shadows at night, and of course at night. And that had a very dramatic impact to be talking about them, and then to see only shadows in, outside of the Jungian office walking. I thought that was really quite brilliant and very effective. Are we only shadows speaking and interacting with other shadows?
Yeah.
Powerful statement.
Yeah. This decision, Lisa sent me yesterday, a theater of shadows, the real one, with puppets and this kind of things. And I, first of all, I had this, I started to show on the movie that kind of stuff, with puppets and shadow, make a theater, and, to illustrate the problematic, let's say. But as I start to, because it's very creative, it's a process of creation, and very nice to see this kind of things. But I start to, when I start to study that, and I realized that I should show people, actually, because I talked about people, so that's why I choose to take some shots of shadows on streets and people who walk in, and this kind of things. It's very, I think it's very plastic image, and yeah. But it's about the Red Book. I don't really, I think Jung, you can read you can see Jung on everything if you want, you know, on the movies, on music. He's a very pop person, let's say, but himself as a person, no. You know, you can take his concepts and his theories and you see in everything, but Jung himself, I don't, is not quite popular here, at least in Brazil.
So another easy question to get things started. John wanted to know where the urban scenes in the movie were shot.
Well, the most part of them is here in Porto Alegre, but I have a lot of, I don't know how to say that, bank of images. And so I bought some images from everywhere. So you have on the images, you have Canada, you have, you know, you can see United States, you can see a lot of places. So, but because I didn't want that my city was como se diz, Isabel, help me, reconhecível.
Recognized.
I didn't, eu não queria que a cidade fosse reconhecível.
He didn't want that the city, that people could recognize, could see that that was the city he was speaking of, showing.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. Where are the, I guess all the analysts in the film, are they in various locations in Brazil?
Yeah, some of them here in Porto Alegre, some of them in São Paulo, Portugal as well, because I make some partnership with institute from Portugal as well, so I have Portuguese people, and yeah, but some various cities around Brazil.
Well, they were very well spoken. You picked a really wonderful group of analysts to talk to.
Yeah, I tried to make some kind of conversation between them, you know. I asked the same questions for all of them, almost. And so I can take one subject and treat like one text, you know, because the most part of them talk with the same knowledge background. So I can edit before as a big text, you know. So yeah, it's one link to another.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you really wove them together well, because somebody would start with the basic concept and then somebody else would get deeper and elaborate on it more, and they flowed together very well.
Did you, I'm just curious, technically, what was your shooting ratio? How much editing did you do? Did you shoot 100 hours for every hour that you got, or how was that?
I don't really know the quantity of hours that I shoot, but I think each interview have 1 hour. I have nine interviews, so at least 9 hours for interview, and then other, you know, the images that I put, how to say that, the image that cover the interview, I think more 5 hours. So yeah, almost 20 hours.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Elena, your hand is up.
First of all, amazing documentary. Thank you so much for doing it. And what is your expertise as a reporter? What are you specialized on reporting in?
When I was journalist, you say?
Yeah.
None. Actually, I was very young when I started with report, and the young reporters, they do everything. They put to go to make some politics, make some parties and whatever. And yeah, I didn't have any specialized special
What was the budget?
for the film.
Yeah.
It was like no, it's very little budget. It was like in dollars, it's like $3,500.
Did you guys booked every the talks with analysts, or did you have to pay them, or
No,
they were
no,
willing to do it for free?
no, they do it for free. I never pay, actually. I never pay the interviewers. So
Okay.
I ask them for, if they want to participate, and if agree, we sign a contract, kind of contract, how to say that? Isabel, direito de imagem.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's a specific
Right of
language.
image.
Yeah, it's
So
the
it's
right
called
the right
DNA.
to use the image.
Yeah, it's called DNA. So the other question I would have, you are director, but you guys had also producers, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, actually, I made almost everything. Acting, direction, photo, editing, writing. So almost everything.
yeah.
You did
But
that
I-
all for $3,000?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Who were
Yeah,
the performers of the woman and the child?
No, I think, Gary, you misunderstand. He didn't got $3,500. He paid it to do this movie.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I
Cost-
paid it.
It's not like
It
how
only
much
cost you $3,000 to do this,
Yeah.
movie.
it's incredible, yeah. This is how
You must-
people are dedicated to the art they love and this business. They almost throw themselves under the bus and do for years everything for free, so we get this amazing imagery. And we're just watching it and forgetting it right away, without even valuing it. And some people lose their sleep over it,
I think you must be a good salesman too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's here I have a quite kind of chance because I can handle a lot of things. I can edit, I can make some shoots, I can make some, so I can do a lot of things by my own. So I need and documentary is easier than fiction, easier, let's say, on production. You don't need a lot of stuff and a lot of infrastructure. So me with my camera, I can interview the people. I can, I have, my background on I have, all the things that I use to make some videos for enterprises, the institutional videos. So I have everything with me, camera, things to camera movement and so on. So I use that,
So how, since it was set in Brazil, how have Brazilian people responded to it?
I'm not pretty sure yet because the film was just I just launched the movie, and I talk with a target audience, So I talk with students of psychology, psychologists, and analysts, Jungian analysts. So I don't have the answer for the general public, let's say. I sell the movie now for a channel, for a Brazilian channel. So, but they will put on screen, on air, in November, or I think, I don't really know the dates, but so I
Well,
don't,
after the election.
yeah, after the election. Yeah, uh, all I tell them to put on before the election, but they have this kind of Isabel, help me.
Yes.
A grade de programação já estava completa.
Yeah, they have a schedule that is already organized before.
Yeah. So they put the movie after the elections, but I tried to do before. Because I know, I think that is very important. It's very pretentious as well. But I kind of, I would like that the people who see the movie, and the movie could make a difference, could make some changes, or at least just how to say that, sorry. But it's very pretentious, nobody cares about the movie. The most part of people have already the direction where they go. So this kind of the movie will make some differences. It's just on my fantasies, it's not gonna happen.
Well, I think you should enter it into film festivals, around the world.
Yeah, I thought, I think about that, but for me, this movie have a very, very specific audience. So, and it's not very the language that the movie uses is very classic, the interviews and so on. So it's not very not accepted, it's not the word, but the festival is looking for something more creative, more innovation, this kind of things. And my film is very classic. It's not. I decided to not do that. I decided to not put on films festivals because it's a lot of work to do that, a lot of money, and I didn't have. So
Yeah.
So I decided to not do that. And I try to talk with my audience, So that's why I write to you, I write to other people, But with the people who are interested on philosophy or on psychology, or this kind of subjects.
Yeah. Rob, do you have a question?
So you were saying that most of the people already have, they're already going in a certain direction. Is that what you're saying, that they're not so interested in the topic, that they have, how did you put it?
So I think that's cut a little bit. I didn't know.
Rob, do you have some static in your mic?
I have my mic. It's not the right place either. So you were mentioning something like that. Most people are going in a certain direction already, and wouldn't be necessarily moved by your film.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say that what direction are most people going? I mean, is it a matter of like, well, destroy the enemy, or something like that? Is that what you mean when you say the word direction?
No, what I mean is the people already chose them candidate, you know, the left will vote for the left candidate and the right will vote for the right candidate, and it's already chosen. So the, because here in Brazil is not like in the United States, you have a lot of parties, you know, it's not like A and B. It's like we have like 7 parties who dispute the presidential post. So, and you have the good ones, you have the people who try to understand the country, have a lot of culture background and so on, but they don't talk with the people actually. They don't achieve the masses. So, and these 2 persons have a lot of emotional force that bring the people with them. So, and that's what I mean actually.
Would you say that that's just a follow up there? Then would you say that those emotional forces, then, you know, the outcome is basically to, you know, win, to defeat the enemy, so to speak? And that's, I mean, that brings us back to our Jung thing, right? Is that how do you deal with your shadow?
Yeah, with my personal shadow.
No, I'm just saying that that's what, when we're talking about Jung and shadow, is, well, how do we deal with our shadow? How do we
Yeah.
resolve our shadow issues?
Yeah.
And I think that the standard way of people have of dealing with their shadow issues, at least they think they're dealing with their shadow issues, is to defeat their shadow.
That's it. But to defeat the shadow, I think the first step is recognizing your projections. So if one try to, if one, if I recognize my projections, I have a chance to change if I want to change, you know. But if your projections is unconscious, so you just act, you know, just project and act for that, and all the guilty is to the other, you know. So it make the effort to recognize the shadow and make the shadow conscious is it's a lot of effort actually. So in the most part of the people, I think they don't really know about that, so they just act.
That's why movies like this, I think, are so important, because it makes the language of projection and shadow more mainstream. You know, with some of our recent political stuff, even on the news channels, you hear them talking about projection, which 5 years ago, nobody talked about projection, particularly on the news. And now you hear it all the time. Well, maybe not, you know, on some of the far right wing channels. Well, I don't know. I don't watch enough of them. But people are learning about these concepts through the news. And I think, you know, the more media like news and movies where people can learn about them, the hopefully the easier it will be to do the work.
Yeah, actually this is one of the challenge that I had. It's make a such complicate issue easier, and try to not to lose on deepness.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was the challenge, you know, try to I would like the movie. Isabel, help me. Eu gostaria que o filme fosse visto por todo mundo e compreendido por todo mundo.
He would like the movie to be seen by everyone, understood by everyone, comprehended by everyone.
Yeah.
I think you know, that I agree with Lisa and your intent there. I think it's a very powerful educational film, and so to get it into high schools and universities, you know, where we are actually attempting to educate people, you know, and I can see it spreading that way into media and into, you know, other forms. But you know, there, I mean, because it's very, it's deep, but it's very accessible. And it's, you know, and Jung isn't offered regularly in university. He's just not. There's a huge fear, I guess I would say. And you make the shadow concept, which I think people have heard of that, but they don't really understand it, most people. And you make it accessible with your choices. I think it's, I hope you have contacts within all the different universities, you know, psychology departments or philosophy departments. I mean, part of what we're working with today is these are all interdisciplinary realities, and we need to work, and we need to move, and we need to learn, you know, in this broadened field in order to really, you know, gain wisdom and self-reflection. So, I mean, I'll certainly tell people about it, you know, in, you know, the contacts I have with universities, etc. So thank you for making it so accessible and very, you know, it had a good flow when I was engaged with it the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, so Sandra, maybe you could share it with, there are a couple universities or graduate schools here in the US that have a good Jungian program. So Pacifica, where Sandra went, is one of them, and
CIIS.
CIIS.
Yeah, there's a lot actually. Yeah.
They would also be good places to have the film shown because they teach you.
Yeah, it will be nice. Actually, here in Brazil, that is one of the things that, because you know the distribution of the film is one big issue here in Brazil, because you know the cinema theaters, is you know the big companies take it, so the small film like mine don't have any place at all. So I have another difficulties here, because here in Brazil we don't have what you have in the United States and Europe as well, the distribution between universities. You have the people. I sell my last film for a United States distributor who work only with educational programs, you know, universities, museums, and so on. So we don't have here in Brazil this kind of company that work with the educational sector.
Right.
So yeah, I will try to make some contacts in the United States and Europe to make this kind of work. But
have you put this on YouTube at all? Or
no, not at all.
Anything?
Because I had I had to make some money with I have, you know, I would like to make some money with the film as well. So so I don't put for free on YouTube. I put on Vimeo, and just to the people want to see, pay a little bit so they can download the movie and so on.
If anybody out there has ideas for how to help him distribute it, send them to me and I'll forward them to Lucas. Like I'm thinking Gather, or getting it on some of the things like Canopy, or some of the alternative streaming services. Elena, go ahead.
Yeah, ACC distribution. I think it's a problem because I don't know how many of you know Schindler's List. Have you ever heard about the Schindler's List?
Yes.
Even only specific people know this movie.
Yeah.
And in Germany, for example, when you study sociology, it's a must. But when I met Janusz Kaminski, him personally, because I worked on set and he was once there. And when I ask Americans if they know Schindler's List, they mostly don't, because it's not common to screen it at schools here. But in Germany it is. So it also depends on timing. I can see that coming in 20 years, when everything is over, and all of a sudden this movie will be, or this documentary will be such thing as a witness of happenings. But I also mostly see this documentary screening at schools as educational program, or at least, yeah. I don't think it's gonna hit the mainstream. Maybe it's gonna hit the mainstream if something really bad happens, like in Germany. Then you could screen it probably on TV at 6 p.m. But most likely in Germany, it would even pick up success. Yeah, if you go and put this movie on top of Schindler's List, which is getting screened every year anyways, and yours can be screened afterwards probably too. I can see it.
The film, that's I think that this film have the big a very target audience. So I talk with you guys, you are you study Jung, so you're very on this subject, so. But if I talk with this film with the people who don't work with these concepts, or don't read Jung or whatever, they don't really care.
I think the audience, the target audience that you're looking for is maybe broader than you think. Last time I commented that there was a not heavy metal, but a metal group, and it's called Tool, and they had and they do one of their they do several of their things are on Jungian concepts, and one is on the following the work for the shadow. And I mentioned it last time. It was called 46 and 2, and it's probably got 30 million views on YouTube, or I may be wrong, but there's there's quite a few views on YouTube of and it talks about my shadow and a lot of their work. I mean, they're just finishing up their tour. They just finished their tour, and they've been famous forever amongst thousands of, like 30, 40,000 people in a Coliseum and stuff like that. I had no idea. And, my son-in-law brought this, asked me about this. If there's any connection between somebody podcasting and talking to you about the shadow work and the shadow, and then connecting that in any way with the concept of maybe mentioning in the background Tool, it'll show up on YouTube as at least something kind of going on. There's just I think there's a lot of market there that's just under the surface that you
Yeah.
may just accidentally tap into. Just remember that if you look it up on YouTube, it's called 46 and 2, and it's called Tool. And it's
I look for that.
yeah, look for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but I'm pretty sure that the target audience is big enough, you know.
It's there's just so much shadow work that's going on under the surface that that we just don't see.
Well, I'd like to introduce a little plot twist and dive a little deeper in our questioning. And, you know, with projects like this, whenever you work with Jungian concepts, a lot of times one is confronted with those same concepts while working on the project. And it requires one to work through exactly the same issues that, you know, in your personal life that you're working with, you know, out there. And so I was wondering whether, you know, you had any of your own, and you don't have to get, you know, terribly personal, but if you had any of your own shadow issues come up while you were making this film that you had to work through at the same time, you know, was it transformative for you
Oh
to
yeah,
make the film?
pretty for sure. I start to you know searching for a shadow and looking for this concept and so on, and making the movie start first of all with me. So yeah, I have to face in some of my shadows. I'm pretty sure that I a lot of work to do yet, but I start to recognize my projections first of all, and yeah, and make a lot. So and then I start to, you know, kind of work with that, and it's a game changing actually. When you start to work with your shadow, for me, it's just, what came from was the sense of responsibility. I think that is one thing that came from facing my shadows, and somehow I don't know how to explain that, and because I don't truly understand that, but somehow facing my shadows show me that the life is a preparation to death somehow, but I don't truly understand that. And starts with the shadow work, but I think that is a lot of more on that, you know, the relationship with the family, the birth of my kid, you know, a lot of stuff's going on. So, but I think that starts work with my shadows, give me this kind of sense, this feeling of finitude. So yeah, but I don't truly understand what I feel.
So you showed a lot of images from the Red Book in the movie. Do you have a favorite? And how did those images affect you?
Well, I tried to read the Red Book, but I feel that I'm not ready yet because it's very complex, very metaphorical. I don't get it, you know. So the image was very nice. I see some videos, you know, with people who explain and so on. So, but the image is very nice. It's quite good. painting, artist, and I have some, but I use that much more as to show to illustrate, than to make some meaning,
Mhm.
Mhm.
just because the image is pretty nice.
Yeah, we read as a group. We read the whole Red Book from beginning to end. It took us about 4 years, and it was good to read it as a group,
Yeah,
because you get lots of people's uh, collective intelligence coming together.
Mm.
yeah, because yeah, it's very. I feel that I'm not ready yet to understand that book, so I have to go deeper on Jung, to understand more his life and so on. So to try to understand the Red Book, maybe start with the Black Books. I don't know. I don't have the Black Books. So.
You also brought in a number of images of fascism and Nazis, many of whom escaped to South America and settled in South America after World War II. So, do you see a connection between the shadow forces that are erupting in Brazil right now, with that historical connection?
With the Nazis on Germany, I don't think so. I
Oh,
don't I
okay.
don't I don't have the knowledge to know to talking about that, but I don't think so. I think that because here in Brazil we have a fascist movement called integralistas in the 30s. So it's the same thing that what happened in Germany or in Italy. So, and it was in the same time. So I don't think that came from the Nazis. I think that the fascist movement it's between us always. It's underneath the society, and sometimes they go up, and show themselves,
Mhm.
but it's always with us, this kind of understanding, or this point, I, how to say, this understanding of the world, this kind of concept of the world is always with us. I don't see the connection between Nazis from
Yeah.
Germany who came from South America and the fascism that emerged nowadays.
Yeah, that's interesting. That just goes to show you how bad my understanding of world history is, because I never learned about the fascists in Brazil in the 1930s.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
my
yeah,
education focused entirely on Europe, and
yeah.
yeah.
Actually, have a for Brazilian story. We have a lot of coup d'état. I don't know how
Mhm.
to say that. You understand? So
Yeah.
it's very military coup. All of the Brazilian history. So very not so nice, not very democratic. Yeah, the law the most the the longer period of democracy is this. It's now, like 37 years. So it's the longest that we have democracy. 37 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Rob, you want to? Right.
I'm going to preface my question with my son just gave me this book, and it's a young adult book. It was written in the 60s, and I don't know if you've ever seen this before. It was written by Ursula Le Guin.
Mm.
It's called Wizard of Earthsea, and it's a story about a young man's battle with his shadow. And the reason why I brought up the whole idea of what does resolution look like, and I think the common thing is to look at it in terms of defeat, that we're going to defeat our shadow, and that's exactly what the main character of the story tried to do, but in a very Jungian way. It ended with him identifying and taking responsibility, I guess that's the way to put it. But it's an identification in that he realizes that his shadow is part of himself. The story just kind of ends there. It just kind of just leaves you hanging, and unfortunately, that's what I can say about Jung too. He kind of leaves you hanging. So there's identifying. So we have our shadow. We can identify it, and that's a huge step to say, this is me. I mean, this thing that I'm projecting out there, that's me. That's huge. That's a huge responsibility thing. But there's more to the story, and Doc was saying something about there needs to be another story written. And I'm wondering how does this story end, or what do you see how this story ends? If it's a relationship with your shadow, how do you see that story going to the next step? In other words, what is the next step? Is it we get responsibility, but there's a relationship there, and what's that relationship like? And how does that story go to its next level?
The story of the movie, you say?
I'm thinking of the story of humanity and its shadow. If we go to identification as being able to see that this is me, this is part of me, what's the next? Because we can identify something as part of me and still hate it, right? and anybody out there that represents, like that part of me that I hate, even if I've identified it, I want to destroy it.
Yeah.
So where does it go? What's next?
Yeah, that's what I don't really know. It's a very deep question, but I think that's what Jung said about integration. You integrate your shadow, become with this integration of your shadow, you go deeper in yourself. You became more strong to face the world. So. I think that's the goal, Well, that's not the goal. The goal is it's what we call the individuation process. But you have to pass the shadow. You have to face the dragon, and then you can. Then you have an open gate to go deeper, But first of all, you have to face your own shadow. But yeah, it's a very deep question. I don't really have the answer for that.
Just a quick note, Rob, and that Jung very definitely emphasized that doing the work of the personal shadow is a beginning, right? Recognizing it, integrating it, and it's pretty much of an ongoing process. As we individuate, as we integrate, we then go to another stage, and we might find sort of a deeper shadow. It's a cyclical process. Plus, that's just on the personal side, and clearly throughout the Red Book, you see that Jung is dealing with the collective unconscious, right? So it's really an unending process. If you integrate your own shadow and are beginning to work, basically your own unconscious, right? You know,
Yeah.
congratulations. And then, you know, the collective unconscious is a part of all of us. It's a, you know, and each culture has its own shadow, you might say, apart from the individuals within it. And pretty soon we're looking at Jung did as going and integrating aspects of our collective consciousness from, I don't know, tens of thousands of years ago. So the goal, if we want to talk about a goal, would be a complete transformation of everything that is unenlightened, to throw another word out there, so that, you know, we actually live in peace and harmony and joy, and, you know, we are compassionate creatures. I mean, it's a lovely utopian, and you know what I mean, that a lot of world literature and philosophy is coming to terms with evil, right? And what prevents us from living in peace and harmony and love. So that's all connected, I think, with integrating the personal shadow and then the collective shadow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a good place to bring up the illusion of separateness that we live within. If we think we're separate, then we do see others and we do project onto others. But, you know, once we start seeing that everything is interconnected with everything, then it's like looking at a big mirror everywhere. And I was just reading this book by an Italian analyst, and he told this story about a particular client of his who he you know, in the analytical session, he says he usually, you know, sits back and listens very intently, but at this one particular session, he was very talkative and was interpreting and talking and talking and talking. And for this client's next session, she canceled because there was a flood in town, and the flood water was on the main streets, and she didn't want to go out and, you know, get stuck. Also told him that she started taking a Tai Chi class, and apparently in Italian, Tachi and Tai Chi are like, they sound almost exactly the same, but what it means in Italian is you talk too much. And so he was pointing out how the external world was reflecting back, you know, what was going on in the field in their analytic session, that she felt flooded by his words and his interpretation, and it showed up like in the real world. And where was I going with this? So yeah, when we can start to see those kinds of reflections of everybody else and us in everybody else and in the outside world and what's going on, you know, we might see that this, you know, stuff that's happening, this huge polarization that's happening, is a huge polarization in every one of us. And it's for us to integrate polarities. What are the polarities? The polarities between self and other, between freedom and responsibility. All these polarities are in every single one of us, and this is the first conjunctio. This is the first thing you do in the process of integration is integrate these polarities itself. And I'm going on and on and on too long. Somebody else talk.
But just to say something, the movie itself, from my perspective in watching the movie, I felt that movie was presenting much of what Lisa was just talking about. I mean, you're already doing that. You've done that with this movie to a great extent. I was feeling that those things that Lisa just talking about in movie. So I think it's of getting that message across. So
Yeah, it's cutting a little bit. So yeah, I think that as Rob says, what is the goal of that? I don't see a goal. I see the goal is to understand, for me now, is to understand that is a process, That's the difference between Nietzsche that I put on the movie. That's the differences between the Nietzsche's thought and Jung thought. Nietzsche said that he put the Übermensch man, the beyond man, who has already completed the individuation process. That's not realistic. He put himself actually on this position. So it's not realistic. Jung was much more realistic on his approach of the development of the human being. He understood that as a process, endless process. So, and if you achieve some achieve to be an individuate man, not because that's why you call that an individual process. In Nietzsche create this Übermensch, the man who has complete already the individuation process. So, but yeah, it's not realistic, in my point of view, as I understand this situation, that's what I put on the as well.
Okay, so Doc, you had your hand up first, and then after that, Elena. Unmute yourself, Doc.
Or for what it's worth, when I watched the movie, I had a flashback that goes back more than 70 years now. As a little kid, watching a movie that fascinated me about a detective played by Edward G. Robinson. And what reminded me was that the photography was very similar. A very dark movie about a detective after a serial killer, a strangler. And he went after clue after clue after clue. And eventually he proved to himself that the killer could be none other than him. And now what do I do? And first, that resolution in that movie was pretty straightforward. He had to take himself out of society. And that was the end of that movie. But it's something that clarifies that kind of transitional journey. I don't know if you ever had a thought along that line of how somebody goes through a transitional journey to recognize the dark side or the shadow of themselves.
Isabel, help me please with the.
So, Doc, would you mind repeating the question, please?
Yeah, well, I briefly described the plot of this movie, and you ever have a thought
Yeah.
of how somebody goes through that transformation or that journey of recognizing their dark side themselves?
Lucas,
Isabel?
o que ele falou?
Eu não entendi.
Eu também tenho um pouco de dificuldade de entender o que ele está falando, mas assim, ele está comparando o
No,
filme.
no. I understand the whole plot of the movie, but I don't get the question actually. I asked for some help from Isabel.
And I'm also saying that I'm having difficulty understanding the question, not because of the English, but because of the question.
Yeah. Well, I'll try again on the question. That
No,
movie,
Doug, the problem is following. He's a reporter. He's not a psychologist.
Maybe.
well, I'm not.
I have to rescue him. Sorry, I have to rescue him because I'm coming from the same field. You know, it's almost like abusive. He's coming from a field where he wants to make amazing movie because he understands something. He gets the time geist. But the problem is he cannot respond to your psychological deep questions.
Well,
So
I
somebody
didn't-
else has to take
I didn't
over.
consider it a psychologically deep question
Yes, it
because
is,
I'm a
because
long way from a
look at-
psychologist
You
also.
go as a producer or as film person on set and do a documentary about mountains. Only people who can hike and climb the mountains can do the documentary about the mountains. So for him, it's difficult. He's almost ripping his ass off. So you cannot ask very deep psychological questions, you know?
But I'm not a psychologist at all.
Oh, I can try, but I don't really got the question.
Well,
Lucas,
I have,
entendi também, mil desculpas.
I have a response.
John can jump in here.
Yeah.
Please.
This might do a little bridge work, I don't know. But it is a juncture in the conversation. And it struck me, it's my concern throughout, but at any rate, somebody in the conversation brought up the word feelings. So, and this taps into what Elena is saying also, and that is, the film is not just ideas. It's not just a set of ideas. Otherwise, Lucas, you could come and you could join us around the table here every week, and we could talk about Jungian theory and personal experiences, and we would have the conversations that we have. But the film is a different experience. It is a cinematic experience. It's not only words. And when you made the film, it's helpful to get a better understanding of your journalistic background. So I can feel the journalistic orientation, the journalistic perspectivity, shall we say, and I get that now more just having talked with you. But also for me, the film is very poetic. And questions that might not be particularly of interest to everyone, but I was very interested, I'm interested in everything, but interested in, how you actually conceived and brought forth the cinema. This is not a simple news type documentary, and it's a very artistic piece of work. I mean, do you consider yourself an artist as well? Because with those shots, as we were all saying, the shots you chose, if we use the term shots, the sequences, the images, very, very powerful. I mean, in some ways you could turn the sound off and not listen to, although the soundtrack, we haven't even talked about the soundtrack. Mm-hmm. But you could turn off the analysts and all their words if you wanted to. And say, I don't want to hear any of that analytical talk. I just want to watch the movie. And it would be a powerful experience if you just watched it, because you directed it, you conceived it, you wrote it, you directed it, and it's very feeling oriented, strong range of feelings I got, as well as the extremely astute comments by everyone. But for me, it was a feeling experience. So just to bring that to our conversation, with this work we're talking about, how many people are going to engage the ideas and become learned in Jungian expression compared to the number of people who might see the film and get feelings from it, along with ideas?
Yeah, actually, I conceived this documentary as a letter as well for my son, because I start to when he was born, I feel that the time was past, this kind of things, and then as I said before, the sense of finitude starts to grow. So the movie was a letter for him, and I put that on the very beginning of the movie. I put for my son Pietro, and I finished with him as well. So yeah, I would like this kind of feeling on the movie, but I think that was if someday I'm not here anymore, and I don't have the chance to see him grow up, maybe he can see the movie and learn something that I would like to talk to him. So I think that is that's something that he should know. So I put some feeling on that, that's why. But beside that, it's more journalistic, let's say. You have these two concepts on the documentary. You have this poetic voice over that I put, and then we have the theory behind, but I thank you for your words, because I have put some effort on the feeling as well. So thank you for recognizing that.
It's very profoundly woven together, the imagery, the ongoing flow of ideas, but all that imagery of your son, and I would assume his mother.
Yeah.
And wonderful cinematic treatment. But then, did you just a minute ago use the word finitude?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were saying you were this ladder pertaining to your shadow awareness that you alluded to earlier of death, life and death, and shadow.
Yeah.
Got that? You're speaking of a ladder, but you're also a ladder that's an image, that's a metaphor, but it's also the film itself.
Yeah.
Is that ladder?
Yeah, the film itself, it's a ladder.
Yeah.
That's what I try to say. Actually, I made this movie as a ladder for him, because all of that, that as I said, before his birth, I this and I make the movie at the same, I start to make the movie at the same time. So I start, and then I start to study the shadow and so on. So that's why maybe the sense of finitude came with the face in the shadows, you know.
Mm.
Because it's a lot of things. It's not just only facing the shadows, but it's all together, you know. So that's the feeling that I come from when I start to do this movie. And that's a funny thing, because in the end of the movie, the movie ends like quite like that. The final interviewer said something like that when he speak about the Peter Pan complex, you know, the old guys fighting with himself, you know, trying to be young again and so on, make plastics and surgeries and so on. And he says something like, I don't know how to translate that in English, but the old wise man, say that I don't know how to translate that in English, so it's a very complicated phrase, but he end the film with, you know, like you have this kind of naive comprehension of world can be destroyed. I don't know if you use this word. By the old wise man. So getting old and knowing, facing of that, this kind of things. And so the movie end like that as well. So
Yeah.
But it also ends with your little boy, with the hope of the
Yeah.
future and the next generation. What came to mind actually was 2001: A Space Odyssey, which ends with, you know, the Star Child.
yeah.
That's John's favorite movie. Sandra, do you have something?
Yeah, you saying Star Child just reminds me of, you know, it's an archetype, the Star Child. And yeah, so that's a huge field, the collective archetypes. And yeah, anyway, what I wanted to say, Lucas, speaking of the letter to your son, there's a very extraordinary letter that Rilke wrote, the poet Rainer Maria Rilke, to his son, called Letter to My Son, which is intending the same, you know, yeah, I'm sure, ladder, you know, that you are intending for your son. And when I first held my firstborn son in my arms, I just went, I was so extraordinarily overwhelmed by unconditional love. And then slowly thoughts came to me, and, you know, I felt like I was holding God. And I don't think that's an unusual feeling for mothers to have with their children. And, you know, and then the next question was, oh my God, how do you educate God? And so that's an ongoing question. And last night I was thinking of your film because it was almost a full moon, and I was walking at midnight because it was really hot here and I hadn't walked. So I was trying to walk when it was cool. And my shadow was so dense. I mean, talk about feelings. I just felt my shadow was very palpable. And, you know, and then I started to move and was so aware of, you know, suddenly my shadow was moving, you know, we were moving together. I was dancing with my shadow. And how much that was an experience of being mirrored right? And so in order to, in order to work with any of these concepts and feelings, we have to have the basic primary function, if you will, of self-reflection. And I think that's where, we really lose a lot in education. We do not foster self-reflection. We do not foster being able to mirror our own processes. Or for instance, to think of a dream as a reflection, as a mirroring of our own consciousness. So, we have to do that self-reflection in order to identify and in order to integrate, just kind of a stream of thoughts there. But I had a new appreciation for my shadow as a result of seeing your film. And how do you see a collective shadow? Because we only see our individual shadows, and yet that's part of what your film is. Yeah, it's the individual shadows that form the collective. What I said in the beginning, it's like we've got all these shadows talking to each other. What's is there what's behind? Is there anything behind the shadows talking to each other? And often it doesn't feel that way in our contemporary world. Yeah,
pretty much.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Well, just I want to go with what Sandra was saying, that your film gives me hope, because identification is so important, and with the collective shadow, so often it's a collective experience of trauma in some way, and so a lot of shadow is formed through trauma, and I really think, and where I find hope is first is identification, and I would say that the next step is reconciliation, and being able to see the goodness in all the parts of ourselves, regardless of where it's coming from, so finding that good intent, and having a conversation, really a really deep conversation with the shadow. And it's like, or this part of my shadow, because shadow is a very broad thing. This part of what is it that you want? What is it that you really want? And well, in my experience is that it's always something that's for our benefit. And so that comes from identification, exactly what you were talking about, and integration, and that integration looks like a reconciliation, and that's what gives me. And so your movie gives me great hope, because there's so much about it's important is that first that's identification, and then integration, and it's like, and so it's a very important step along the way. And so I think you did good for your son.
Yeah, that's it. I pretty much that, reconciliation with your shadow is integration in my comprehension. It's pretty much that. That's very important thing, other thing that because this very archetypal thing, not archetypal, but our culture, Brazilian culture, I think the United States the same, was born on Judeo-Christianity backgrounds. So, and in this kind of, they try to separate good and evil, and choose one side. People have to choose one side and deny the other. So that's why I put as well the religion between on the movie, because you have this background on us, even if you don't go to church or whatever, you have this because your culture is that. So and that is a thing that I think that's important to treat, you know, to talking about, because devil or wherever it's a human creation. So, and in the movie, I show by that, you know, the integration between them, you know, so you can talk more creatively.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on your, you said something like the individuation, you feel like it's connected to death, like somehow it goes to, and it made me think about Janusz Korczak, the Polish, I don't know if you are familiar with,
No.
he was director of the orphanage, Jewish kids, and he was also a writer and a philosopher, and lived in a ghetto during the Nazi occupation of Poland. And all the kids were sent to concentration camp, but he was very famous. He was a doctor also, was very famous, and he was asked to, well, several times he had a chance to escape or to be freed, but he chose to stay with the kids, and he actually went to the gas chamber with the kids. And his last words were like, I don't wish anybody bad, and like was very kind of accepting his fate. And I thought about his, like, this is the example of individuation and overcoming fear of death and sacrifice. And so that's, I think, so this individuation is really, for me also, that's the overcoming of fear, well, fear of death, and being ready to sacrifice for the better good. Yeah, and like in Janusz Korczak's example, that he doesn't, it's a kind of like, this is the state of affairs, but I have, well, and he worked so hard with the children. He created this unique environment for they had their own like court, and they put plays on, very thoughtful, just like very unique pedagogue that Janusz Korczak was, and who in the end, yeah. So I think that also I'm thinking like Jungians. Well, so I'm from Ukraine, and there was a, well, actually, Lisa, you sent this website about the free psychotherapists for Ukrainians. Actually, it was almost impossible to find anyone for, like, I wanted for and well, in the end, it's, so what I want to say, that's also, it's a kind of like elite, and this theories that we all come up with. We have well, psychotherapists, and the reality, there is there is some kind of gap between that, what we fantasize, we come up with vocabulary, we conceptualize, and with the concrete, that like right now, like I feel guilty that there are children in Ukraine under bombardment, and there are people are just talking about, oh, you know, discussing war, but they're like concretely, they're children who are being killed every day, like in Ukraine by the Russians, and in all this mess. So what am I doing as a, well, I'm thinking I'm helping, you know, supporting my this, but there is like, maybe that's what we should do, to go to, yeah, forget about sacrifice and yeah, complicated. And also another thought I had is about the, like, why is there a split? So I was thinking a lot, well, of course there is this, our egos, but why is there such a fundamental difference in views? So I thought maybe it has to do with the personality type that went, and the ego is in the mix, and the personality, it became just so like unawareness about the difference of the person, like for whatever reasons, we have these fundamental differences of their perception of life. And so how maybe their personality type is the key to this somehow, and then I understand, but we have to find this dialogue. That's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and communication, I think, is very important, but at the same time, very difficult. You know, I faced that with my own family. So if nobody has any other questions, you know, it's very late for Lucas.
That's okay.
Do you have anything you want to say, Lucas?
No, I just want to thank you for this meeting, and thank you, Lisa, for share the movie with all of you guys, and thank you so much for having me here and for this very nice evening.
Hmm.
Well, I'm so glad you contacted us. You know, we get occasional people writing to us saying, you know, would you do this? Would you do that? And when yours came through, it was just so genuine and real. You know, it didn't feel like a marketing campaign.
And we watched the movie.
Yeah, and we watched the movie and we just loved it, and we're so thrilled to be able to meet you. As much as Zoom is meeting, you know, it would be nice to shake your hand and give you a hug. And
Yeah,
so if you're ever in California and want to come to Monterey, you will be welcomed with open arms, and we'd love to meet you in person.
no, thank you so much. The same for you. If you came to Brazil, to Porto Alegre, you were very welcome here. I would like to drink some coffee with you and talk about Jung more.
At least.
Do you have any, what's your next project? Do you have another project?
Mm, not really yet. I have some ideas, but not a project yet. I want to have, you know, raising some money to stay just half of a year just to read a lot and writing a project, you know. But I have ideas on Jung again, uh, but maybe not in the shadow. But it's a very nice world, you know. Jung is a world, so there's a lot of things to work on him. I have some ideas, but not a project, and I have some ideas as well, and philosophy and literature. I have an idea to make a documentary about dystopias literature, but it's just an idea, not a project.
Okay, well, if you want to share some of these ideas, you know, we can see what we can do to connect you with, you know,
Oh,
friends
nice.
you can talk to. You know, like we have a friend who's into Jung and ecology and the environment and climate change, and you know, so lots of possibilities, and we'd like to keep you as part of our family now.
Thank you so much. And one time that I have something more concrete, I make contact with you.
Okay.
Thank
I
you
want
very
to
much,
say thank
guys.
you as well, Lucas. And I was hoping that you would continue down the Jungian road with some documentaries.
Thank you so much. Thank you all of you guys. Thank you, Isabel, for help to translate.
Yes,
Thank you.
very much. Thank you. And welcome you too to our community.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Next week is, what's next week? Oh,
You're-
I'm doing Marie-Louise von France. We're
No,
studying.
you're Lamont.
Oh, no, Lamont. Lamont Williams is next week. He has a new theory of energy and time. It should be,
A replacement for the standard model.
Yeah. see, we talk about all kinds of things here. It's, you know, it's very eclectic.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
guys.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
All of you.
All right, thank you.
Okay.